WCNC Charlotte. This is Flashpoint, where power and politics collide and the tough questions get asked and answered.
Thanks for joining us here on Flashpoint. I'm Ben Thompson. The election here in the Carolinas is now over, and despite what was mixed results across the country, Republicans in North Carolina, they have a lot to celebrate this week. The GOP winning across the board from that big U.S. Senate seat, 2 spots on the state Supreme Court, and gains in the General Assembly, where state Senate now has a super majority, the Republicans do. In the state House, they're just 1 vote short of overturning a veto from the Democratic governor. In a few minutes, we're going to break down the results with political professor Michael Bitzer. But first, joining us now on Flashpoint, Speaker of the North Carolina House, and perhaps more importantly for our viewers, native son of Kings Mountain, Republican Tim Moore. Speaker Moore, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Hey, great to be with you today.
Your party had a much better week here in North Carolina than it did nationally. The first question, why do you think that is?
Well, I believe that North Carolinians recognize the hard work that the state legislature has done in North Carolina. It's not an accident that North Carolina has been ranked the top state in the country for business, that we continue to grow. You look at other states around the country that are losing population, where folks are moving from. And it's because a lot of times because they're high tax, high regulation, and just make it difficult to do business there. We have in North Carolina chosen a different path, one to reduce taxes, one to make it a business-friendly environment, investing in education, investing in public safety, doing those things to make it so that businesses and people want to locate here. And I believe that's why people voted the way they did on election day. And so we're very proud that we actually expanded our numbers in the state house. And of course, the state Senate expanded their numbers and actually obtained a supermajority there as well. So we're feeling very good about the way things have gone and the way this upcoming session is going to go as well.
I know Ronald Reagan had a saying that one should not speak ill of other Republicans, and I'm sure you probably believe in that as well. But what do you think did not translate nationally, at least?
I don't know. I think the jury is still out on that, and I believe that when it comes to the national environment, that we need to do a true deep dive about why things did not go as well as they should have, particularly in other states. But I can compare that with North Carolina, where every single statewide judicial race was won by a Republican, and I think that was due in large part to just how extreme this current Democratic Supreme Court has been on issues such as voter ID, where they essentially struck down a constitutional amendment adopted by the people in 2018 for photo ID for voting. By the way, that's something we're going to fight to see implemented in this upcoming session. The people voted for it. 36 other states have it. It only makes sense to have that as some baseline protections to prevent election fraud. But they also struck down laws that limited sex offenders. And that was a little personal because I had the bill that they struck down was a bill known as the Jessica Lunsford Act. That was a bill that I sponsored years ago when I was in the minority here, that received overwhelming support. So, folks are tired of crime, folks are tired of those things, and so they were able to look at the current court that was there, and that's why I think they lost their seats. And I think now they're going to be looking to all of us to work for the betterment of the state moving forward in this upcoming session.
You're one short of a supermajority in the House, though, but you do have some conservative Democrats. Are you operating like you have a supermajority?
What I've called it is a governing supermajority, because we do have a few conservative and moderate Democrats who will vote with us on a lot of issues, particularly on business issues. When it comes to social issues, those can always be tougher, frankly, even within our own caucus. So I would tell you everything that we're going to do, we're going to approach it the way we have this last session. We're going to try to build consensus. We're going to seek to be bipartisan as much as we can and try to come up with ideas that folks can rally around. But there will be those times when there's just going to be a disagreement, probably between the legislature and the governor. And when those occasions occur, I feel confident that we'll be in a position to ensure that the will of the legislature becomes the law.
This week you told reporters that you expect to take up Medicaid expansion next year. But as you know, it's been 7 years. We're only one of 12 states without Medicaid expansion. You have a governor, Republican Senate willing to act now. This would now then push back expansion money another year. On behalf of the hundreds of thousands of North Carolina residents that fall in that gray area, that can't pay for private insurance but don't qualify for the state's unexpanded Medicaid plan. You know those folks are frustrated. What is the holdup when it comes to Medicaid expansion after all this time?
Well, a couple things. One, you're not talking about a full year. This is November. We come back in session in the new session in January. So you're talking about a couple of months is what you're talking about. I do think that it'll be an issue that we take up very soon in the session. Really the disagreement between the House and the Senate when it came to the expansion part was not so much the expansion itself, because as you and your viewers know, the House, or probably know, the House actually overwhelmingly passed a bill that would move forward with expansion. So we did that several months ago. The issue was that the Senate was interested in adding a few other things to it that had to do with scope of practice for medical practitioners, had to do with what's called the Certificate of Need law, which is a very important and very tough issue. So those issues probably complicated it a little bit more than some of the others. But the parameters and the guidelines that we put in terms of cost accountability, making sure there's some kind of work requirement of some kind so that folks don't abuse the system, and ensuring that if the federal match goes away, that the state will not be on the hook. Those things are a part of what's being negotiated. So I think it will end up being fine. So one, I would say is it probably won't be that long before we deal with it. But number two, there are a lot of issues surrounding it. And one other thing, you mentioned the folks in the gray area. Actually, under the COVID protocols that are in place right now, most of those folks are already being covered and would continue to be covered anyway on into the beginning of next year. So I don't know of any situation where folks are going to drop off in between anyway.
Fair point. Our conversation with Speaker of the North Carolina House, Tim Moore, continues after this.